Welcome back to another episode of the Babbles Nonsense podcast. Thank you for enjoying last week's episode where I gave dating and relationship tips and advice. Well, not really advice. I'm not one to give advice. This week I wanted to do a part 2 and kind of tie in AceMetaphor from Instagram and TikTok, who is essentially a creative genius. I wanted to tie in his perspective, so stay tuned for that. All right, everybody. Welcome to part 2 of this dating relationship, whatever this podcast has turned into. I am not qualified to give dating relationship advice. I have never been in a long-term relationship. I have only been in long-term situationships. But what I wanted to do is kind of make it a little bit more funny, more lighthearted, since last week I got a little off on a tangent and was a little more like, I don't know. I know that we talked about dating with intention for the most part and what we were seeking out because of our parental growing up or friendships or whatever. And then I dived in a little bit about how I don't personally like dating nowadays because most people just want to chase, and then I don't really like the game, the chase, the cat and mouse game. And we're going to dive into some of AceMetaphor's reels that kind of go along with what I talked about, or maybe where I got the ideas from, since I stumbled upon his TikToks and then followed him on Instagram because your girl just ain't a TikToker. Just not about it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I will go on the occasional search on TikTok, but if I find someone on both, then I typically will just go follow them on Instagram. With that being said, we're going to start all of that in just a second. I did want to make a quick announcement. I know if you follow me on Instagram, babbles_nonsense, you will have noticed I mentioned a very special guest that will be coming up. His episode will be next week. That's Chris Medina. He's a psychic medium. He reads for celebrities, obviously normal people as well. Me, I'm a normal person, not a celebrity. And he does readings, and he's actually amazing. He's the real deal. He's such a down-to-earth guy. He responds to people, and that episode will be next week, and you do not want to miss it because it's a special treat. But anywho, back to what we were talking about today. So since I started off last week's episode with dating with intention, I'm going to play that first for you. So this is AceMetaphor's backstory a little bit on AceMetaphor. From what I understand from the books I've read that he's written, following him and his lives that he gets on and kind of gives more of his personal life. He used to be the boy that played the game, ran the field. And I'm not talking about football. I'm talking about the play-a game out there. He says that he did women wrong. He was just out looking, for a hookup and all of that. So he has made it his thing now in life where he has turned his leaf. He knows what he wants in a woman. He is giving women kind of the playbook, if you will. He's like, here it is. I'm laying it out for you. I've seen it. I've done it all. I've now researched it. I've spoken to a lot of women, and here's the issues you seem to have. Here's my advice. Now, he's not a therapist. He is just a real dude talking about real shit, and I'm going to play some of those for you, and starting first with how he explains dating with intention, or like how to know if a man is dating with intention.
This is how you know he's intentional about you. When this man tells you to your face that he's looking for a wife, that he has prepared his nest and his heart to receive the woman God has for him. That his goal in dating right now is to find that capable woman, his partner, a spouse. This is a man that's intentional. How many times have you been with a man where you have to use guesswork? You have to use assumptions. You have to make hypotheses on what he actually wants. And you guys, let me tell you what you do. You get inside the car anyway, and you don't even know where the hell y'all going. You don't know if he wants marriage, if he don't. You don't know where you fit in his life. At every stop, he keeps giving you these unsure, vague answers. And then you'll stay in the car. Ladies, how many times have a man told you that he's just going with the flow and you flow right with him? This is how you know he's intentional about you?
So, a couple of things about that. I do agree with him to a certain extent, right? Like we all have our opinions and whatnot on any situation. And that's what I do love about him is on his Tonight's Conversation app, he actually has a panel and he'll bring up topics like this and just speak on it and just hear everyone's viewpoints. He makes it very clear he doesn't always agree with everyone's viewpoints, but just as a grown-up, hearing someone else's viewpoint, it's not that it's going to sway you one way or the other. It's just going to give you different perspective that you may not have thought about. And that's what I love about him. So my take on this is absolutely. Women, we do this shit all the time. I'm not saying that someone has to know if they want marriage on a date with me, even if it's the first date, because that's something I don't know if I want. But there are women out here that are going on dates that are looking for a husband. And I'm not saying that first date, but that's why we date, right? You date to see who you want, but you go on that date knowing what you want, if that makes sense. So his metaphor was exactly correct. We get in the car and have no idea where we're going. And then no one's honest about it, right? Like I said, no one's honest on that first date, because then if you're just looking for a hookup and that other person isn't, but you still want to go on this date, that other person likely won't go. And then you won't get to know them and yada, yada, yada. So yes, maybe we should just be more honest up front, and then you know what you're getting into when you get in the car and you kind of know which direction you're going. I don't think you have to 100% know, but I do think that you have to both want the same thing. And that meaning, hey, are we both going on a date because we're looking for relationships, or are we both going on a date because we're looking just to hook up? Are we looking to just have a friendship? What's the ultimate goal if this date goes well? What's that goal look like? And if I'm going on this date and I'm not sitting here thinking automatically like, well, I mean, it's just a date. I'm never going to see him again. And some people do that. When I go on a date, I'm like, I hope this goes really well. I hope the time that I'm investing in this, out of my time on this date goes really well and something comes of it. That's why I'm going. So with that said, this next one I'm going to play kind of dabbles in that and talks about, are you wasting my time? So if we're going on these dates and you're intentional about what you want, but the other person isn't, is that considered wasting time? So here's this one.
Haven't made up your mind if you want a spouse or relationship, you are wasting my time. If we are dating and you don't have it made up in your mind prior to this date that you are looking for something serious, you are wasting my time. Because guess what? You ain't coming on this date. Matter of fact, you ain't telling me before the date that you only interested in a friends with benefits. No, you don't do that. You waste 3, 4, 5 months of my time before you tell me that sex was all you ever wanted. And in the meanwhile, what you do is you give me these vague answers that allow me to read into what I think you mean. Well, I can see something happening between us. I mean, I ain't never felt this way about a woman or a man in my life. I mean, woo-wee. I don't know what I would do without you. A man will say all those things to you, right? Then be confused when you think he was talking about heading toward a committed relationship. Ladies, quit letting these off the hook. If you haven't made up your...
So that kind of ties into both of what I just talked about. Like, is it wasting time if you don't go on this date? But that goes back to dating with intention. So it all goes back to dating with intention and knowing what you want when you're dating. Again, I should just definitely make a dating app that's called Intentions. And in your bio, you have to put what you're looking for. But I guess human nature, people lie. So I don't know if that would work or not. Anyways, is it wasting time? Well, I guess it depends on what your intentions are. I was asked once, or not asked, but told, I hope you didn't think I wasted your time because, this didn't go into a relationship like you wanted. And initially I was like, well, it wasn't a waste of my time. I enjoyed my time. And I still don't necessarily think that it was wasting my time. Obviously it grew into a friendship. I met a cool person. I knew what I wanted, or I figured out what I wanted. That's how we learn things. But I agree with what AceMetaphor says. Like, if you're dating and you're dating other people, or, you're just casually dating, I think that needs to be said. I think that we sometimes pay attention more to actions than words, even if they're not aligning. For instance, if someone is, they're hanging out with you 4 out of 7 days a week, you're talking pretty much all day, every day, and you're going on dates, you're going to dinner, you're doing these things, a woman is going to start feeling like that's a relationship, or that it's heading toward a relationship. And then when women do bring up like, oh, okay, this is what, this is what I'm wanting, I'm kind of wanting to be exclusive, or maybe there's talk about feelings, which sometimes can scare men away, but those things have to be talked about, right? Like, we have to know if we're on the same page, like, so that we're not wasting time 5-6 months in and then being like, oh, you thought this was a relationship? You're confused. And then the woman's like, no, I think you're confused, because there was no communication about it. So I think it boils down to just going back to basic communication and making sure you're able to express yourself and someone's listening and you feel safe in that discussion, right? Like, I personally don't necessarily agree with the wasting the time unless a person intentionally is just holding on to you because they don't want to let you go, because y'all have fun together or whatever. Now, that could be a waste of time because that other person is intentionally doing that. If it's not an intentional thing, then I don't think it's wasting time. But there's a lot of research out there that says that men kind of know what they want within 6 months. Like, within 6 months of a relationship, a man knows if they want to be in this relationship, if they want to continue it further, or, they think about marriage, or either if you're not really a marriage oriented person, it may just be a long-term committed relationship with that person. And they say that men, they know by 6 months, but a lot of men that I talk to, or a lot of my friends' husbands, they, open up and have deep conversations with me when we're all hanging out. And it's like, yeah, I knew within like the first couple of dates. Or some was like, yeah, I knew when I met her I was going to marry her. I know my friend Danielle and her husband Ryan, they've been married for a really long time, both great people. And he told me, he was like, yeah, I knew the moment I met her, I was like, yeah, that's the person I'm going to marry. And some people know, and then some people don't. But then you're dating someone, I think after a first few dates, you kind of know, like, yeah, I really enjoy this person. I think I want to make her my girlfriend, and then go from there. So that's my thoughts on that one. And we'll move on to why I hate dating, about the chase, the cat and the mouse, the chasing game. And AceMetaphor put it perfectly. Like, he just has a really good way with words when I ramble on around the topic and I'm trying to find the words. But anyways, this is the one that he is talking about chasing men, or men chasing. And this is why I hate dating, because this one I agree with wholeheartedly.
Certain men, they can't be with one woman because they love the chase too much. They love the chase to ever have a catch. So when you say, why would a man give me all this attention in the beginning? Why would he be calling? Why would he be texting? Why would he be taking me out on dates? Why would he be saying all those sweet things in my ear? Why would he be making all these promises? If he really didn't like me, if he really didn't want me, why would he do all these things? And then once I finally give in, once I finally say, I'm yours, he now start acting different because he didn't want you. He just wanted to chase you. And the very minute you stop running, it stopped becoming fun for him. It's no longer fun when you now are giving him attention back. He like, what? No, I want you running. Certain men, they can't be.
So that's what I was explaining last week on the other episode, where I was saying, like, I hate that cat and mouse. Like, I 100% understand you have to bring out a hunter instinct in a man, but to continue that on, like, sometimes, like, you have to end that at some point. And when's the perfect time to end that? Like, how long are you supposed to pretend you don't care when you actually are starting to develop feelings? And then if you do that for let's say average of 3 months, you act like you don't care for 3 months, then that kind of gives that other person like, oh, okay, well, she's okay with this. She's okay with just hanging out occasionally, going on dates. She wants something casual too. And then again, there's the disconnect, right? I mean, we kind of do this to each other. This societal game that you're supposed to play because nothing's changed and it's still in this barbaric area that we're supposed to do. So that's why I hate dating, because I've been in multiple situations like this where I try to play, you know, I'm not going to like this person. I never like anyone. I'm really hard to, you know, connect with someone. And then I do, right? And it's like, wow, I did. Okay, well, cool. Like this person. Now, I don't want to like this person because every other person I've liked, you know, once I've liked them, they ran away. They were done. They were like, well, how are you confused that I didn't want a relationship? And then you give in, right? So you're like, okay, hey, I actually like you. And then it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I don't know why. I don't know why you like me. I chased you and pretended to like you for so long. And it's just that perpetual cycle. So that's the number one reason I hate dating, because I feel like that happens to me more often than not. Now, he did just recently do another one about chasing, and I'm going to play that one. It's a little different than that cat and mouse game that we talked about last week. So here is another chasing example.
Certain men, mature men, chase things that they don't want. You know why? They like to chase more than to catch. That's why when they caught you, he you and let you go and chase the next thing. Whole phase men care more about chasing than they do about catching. That's why they call it game. The game is, let me see if I can get this girl, not the girl that's promiscuous. No, I want to find the good girl, because that gives me an adrenaline rush. That gives me an ego boost. If I can get this girl that don't normally do this, if I can get this girl to fall for me, then I feel better about myself as a man. A lot of men chase because of ego, not because they want you. He chasing for him. He ain't chasing for you.
Okay, so maybe that's why people do this to me, because I'm always like, I'm not going on dates. I'm not doing that. So maybe someone's like out there going, that girl, I'm going to make that one like me. I don't know. I'm just bullshitting over here. But no, I think that's a funny way to look at it, because I never thought about it in that situation where someone is just chasing to feel better about themselves. So also like a lesson I've learned recently in therapy, where when I'm talking about dating and situationships I've been in, you know, I'm always like, I just don't understand. Like, why do men need multiple women? Like, why do they need that? And I get that the human race is not supposed to be monogamous. That's what they say anyways. I get that I get it. Like, men and women think about sex very differently. That's what we talked about on Lauren's podcast, Real Talk podcast with Rhyme and Reason. So go check out that episode I did with her when we discussed sex. We talked about like the differences when it comes to men and women. We just talked about how to a man, it's an act, right? They don't have to be emotionally involved to, you know, get off, have an orgasm, or even be turned on. But then the female brain has to be turned on emotionally to even get aroused, to even get there to climax. So we go about it at two very different speeds, right? That's why we talk about women and how they have a hard time orgasming. And we talked about on her podcast, like the book Becoming Clitorate, and learning why it's more of a male dominated scene when it comes to sex. Like, it's all about the man's pleasure. We rarely talk about the female pleasure, and it's definitely not talked about in school and sex ed and things like that. But I digress. That was a whole episode over on Lauren's podcast. If you want to hear more about it, we definitely talked about all of that over there. So going back to what I was saying, like in therapy, we were talking about cheating and why people need multiple people, or why they can't settle down or whatever. And my therapist said, and I don't know how I'll feel about this yet because it makes sense, but it doesn't. My therapist was like, well, people who feel like they need multiple women, multiple men, it could be men or women, or are very promiscuous and, you know, need multiple sexual partners. It's more of an ego boost because they don't feel good about themselves which I can see because we all do that in certain ways, whether it be sex, alcohol, going to the gym excessively, binge eating. We're trying to make ourselves feel better, right? So there's certain things that people reach to, and maybe that attention from someone else gives that ego boost so they feel better. So it kind of makes sense, but the jury's still out on that, if that's what it is, or if it's just like, hey, I just like the pleasure. I don't know. And the next thing, I hate saying that, like I hate going and next, but I mean, I'm just playing rules for y'all and giving my opinion. So I don't really know how to intertwine those. Anywho, we talked about masks last week, like wearing a mask, being your best self on your first date, which is obvious. Like we always put our best foot forward when we meet someone. First impressions are everything. That's what you're taught. So this next reel that he talks about is kind of that, like being a different person when you meet.
Sure, men. Sometimes women ask me, can that toxic man change, Ace? I need to know if he can change. You already know the answer. Yes, that man can change. You know why? Because he did change. In the beginning, he showed you all the signs of a healthy guy, of an intentional man, and then he changed. So yes, he can change, because in the beginning, he wasn't abusive. Now he is. In the beginning, he talked to you with respect. Now he doesn't. In the beginning, he was considerate. He validated your feelings. He took you out on dates, and now he don't. Yes, that man can change, because he already did. He is no longer the man you fell in love with. So why you keep asking me if that man can change? You should better say, can this man change back? Here's the answer. Change back into what? Who he was before he showed you his authentic self? Can he change back to pretending to be something he's not? Oh, now that's difficult. Sometimes women ask me,
well, that's a very good approach. Also, never thought about it until he made it. It's like, well, why did they change? Why are you not who you were? I feel like I'm consistently me, and that gets me in trouble a lot. I'm consistently who I am through and through. Now, are there times where, like I said on the last episode, maybe on my first date, I will put a little bit of makeup on. I will, brush my hair and wash it. Those are some things I'll do for a first date. And then maybe 4 or 5 dates in, when we're Netflix and chilling, I haven't washed my hair in 5 days, maybe hadn't shaved my legs in 1, 2, maybe 3 days, and I ain't got no makeup on, not even mascara. And if you know me, I have blonde eyelashes and I look crazy without mascara on, so that's what you're getting. But my opinion, I've always been like, maybe I should just go on first dates looking crazy in my sweats and no makeup, not even mascara, because that's typically the only makeup I wear, and my hair a mess. And then if you get to date 3, you get the made up version of me. So you're like, okay. So it's like a reward system. Maybe that's what I should do. Maybe I'm doing it wrong. Maybe to get the person to kind of tell you, or not tell you, but to see if they truly like you as a person and your personality. If I just showed up ratchet as hell, they're not going to come back if they're not attracted, right? But if they truly are like, okay, your personality's pretty good, and then on that 3rd date, they get the made up version because they made it past the first 2, I think I'm onto something. I think, guys, I'm going to go on a date like that, and we'll see how it goes, and I'll report back. But got way off topic there. I agree. Like, we do that. We're like, well, why did you do this in the beginning and you're not doing it anymore? And I think a lot of times that's what relationships, for the people I've talked to who are in long-term relationships, they say the reason it worked was because I continued to date my better half. I continued to date my wife, my spouse, my husband, my partner. I continued to date them. Because, they say when kids are born, you forget to date your partner, things start falling apart, sex is falling off, things like that. And it's just, that's when a lot of people have trouble in their marriage. And I only know that from people talking to me, not because I've actually lived it. So I think he has a good point. So yes, people can change. Clearly they did. Can they change back? Yeah, they can. And I think people do go through cycles, but it's, again, back to communication, pointing those things out, not to be rude or mean or that you didn't care about something, but that you just say, hey, like, we used to go on dates. Why aren't we going on dates anymore? Maybe there's something there that you didn't know. Maybe there's a financial situation that you had no idea about. That happened to me when I was dating someone a long time ago. I couldn't figure out the anger there or why we stopped going on dates. And there was a financial piece there. And he finally told me later, now that we're friends, later in life, he told me, but I didn't know at the time. But it was all about communication, right? Just asking. Sometimes just asking a question doesn't have to be a bad thing. It's how we, I think, communicate it. And I'm not the best at that sometimes. Sometimes I go about it, my tone's off, or maybe I didn't word it correctly. And so it comes across differently. So I don't think it's also... I'm always saying, communication is key. Communication is key. But I also heard someone say one time, communication isn't always key because you can communicate really, really well. And if the other person isn't hearing it or is shutting that communication down or doesn't even want to communicate about it, it doesn't matter how much or well the other person is communicating if the other person isn't listening. So they said the actual key is for both people to listen well. And I was like, that's a good point too. Never thought about that. So I think just listening to other people's viewpoints and perspectives, kind of like AceMetaphor, that podcast that I just mentioned about the communication and listening. And then you just don't think about them and someone words them a different way. And you're like, that makes so much sense. Or you were trying to say it like that and they worded it better. It's kind of like when you're listening to music or a song and you're just like, oh my gosh, these words, this is how I'm feeling. And if I could put how I'm feeling into words, this would be it. So that's why I wanted to play these reels for y'all. I think I'm just going to play one more just because I find it hilarious and he recently posted it. And since we're on this AceMetaphor train here, because I was going to do like separate episodes, but then I was like, people are just going to get really tired of this. So we're just going to make it one long one. So I hope you made it this far. But this one I found hilarious because it does have to do with dating. And it goes back to like when you've been dating for a long time, is that wasting my time? But like when y'all are dating each other for a long time and then the other one's like, but we're not together. So why did you think that? So it's just funny. So here we go.
Times women no longer enough to just watch somebody's actions, because there are men that will perform all the actions of a boyfriend and still claim y'all not together. They be like, well, just because we raw and spending the night over each other's house for the last 9 months, and just because we text and we talk on a daily basis, and just because I get jealous that you texting and talking to other men, and I'll let you know that you ain't allowed to have other people in your life but me. Just because I do all that don't mean we the together. Just because I met your family and you pregnant with my child don't mean we together, though. Just because I ate your last Tuesday don't mean we in no relationship. Where the you get that idea from? Gaslighting. It's funny.
Okay, so sometimes it gets a little vulgar, guys, but it's hilarious. And sometimes I do wish this was an audio podcast. If I could play like his mannerisms, he gets so into this. Like it's funny, but it's not, because there are people out there like that, like saying these exact things. But he's right. Like that is the exact definition of gaslighting. Gaslighting doesn't have to happen just on the first date or by people you don't know. It can happen in a relationship or with someone you've dated for a really long time. It's that whole like, what do you mean? Like, I'm going to get this off me and I'm going to put it on you so that it's confusing and that we don't have to think about it. But I just thought that one was pretty hilarious. Anyways, that's pretty much all I had for y'all. I wanted to kind of do a continuation of last week and kind of tie it in to a more funny perspective, I think, than just being a serious, like talking about relationships. And not that this is not to give any relationship or dating advice, because again, clearly, who am I to do that? I just wanted it to be lighthearted. And I do think that because dating is something that I'm doing in my life, that it just gives perspective. And I think there's other people out there as well. I know with my age and dating, it is a little bit harder because I know a lot of people are married, or maybe they're divorced and don't want to get in another relationship because maybe they didn't have the best first marriage, or that's the only idea they know of marriage, or maybe someone just doesn't want to get married because they had a bad experience with marriage through their parents. I don't know. I don't even know why it's not that I don't want to get married. I'm not opposed to the idea. I just don't, it's not something that I have fantasized about as a little girl. I've never been like, this is what my wedding dress is going to look like. This is the type ring I want. But maybe it'll happen when I meet that person. I'll be like, this is the person. Like, now I get it. Now I know what marriage is about. I don't know. Also, like, just listening to other people's perspectives and looking at all these things. And like, I also follow on Instagram Therapy Jeff. He's a therapist, and he's like the most unconventional therapist, and I think it's hilarious because he gives advice on things that a therapist maybe shouldn't, or not that they shouldn't, but I don't know, like, I love it because it's just blunt and honest. And he just talks about like the different relationship types and polygamy and open relationships, and he kind of gives it this okay to do, but it has to be a communicated thing. It has to be agreed on by both parties. And he talks about like, if you're together for a long time, like your relationship may go through different things. Like you may start out in a very long-term committed relationship, 15 years in, things are, kind of falling off, and you decide, hey, let's just try an open relationship. Here's the ground rules. If these rules are broken, then, it's not done, or as soon as one person doesn't want to do this anymore, we have to reevaluate. I get it. I'm not saying that's what I'm looking for, because I've always been taught, committed relationship, one person, that's what we're all taught. And, opening yourself up to other people, then it's like, well, what if I fall in love with this other person, or they fall in love with somebody else? I don't know. That scares me. But I just like listening to different viewpoints on relationships, dating, and I thought y'all would too. So I will link AceMetaphor's Instagram and TikTok handle in the show notes just to show you where I got his information. And y'all, I 100% recommend following him. He is hilarious. And but it's also like real life stuff. Also recommend Therapy Jeff on Instagram as well. And yeah, that's all I have for y'all today. So stay tuned for next week. I'm super excited to bring Chris Medina on and let y'all listen to our conversation around psychics, mediums, not meditation. I always want to say meditation. That is not the word. Manifestation. That's the word. And we didn't get to the crystals. We talk a little astrology, but we didn't get to the crystals that I wanted to. So maybe we'll have to do a part 2 in the future. He's a very, very busy man. But if you want a reading with him, stay tuned for next week so that you can learn how to do that and learn how they work. I also just wanted to add a quick little disclaimer. I'm not affiliated with AceMetaphor in any way. I just wanted to share his content with the world because I think that he is creatively just a genius, and he is literally changing the dating game. And he's helping women all around, and some men, I'm sure. But I just wanted to share his advice. And if you liked what you heard on the episode, he has way more on TikTok and Instagram, and you can all go check out his content there. It'll be linked in the show notes. But until next time, guys, bye.